right.
Oh,
So, the Monty Hall Show, game reviews and commentaries. Today, we are going to talk about the Lost Mines of Phandelver. Today, we have our players. Uh, we have Eddie Del Castillo, David Elsenson, and Greg Walty,
who?
and Ron Carey. We all just finished playing the Lost Mines of Phandelver. Uh, these gentlemen were the characters. So let me just ask, I'm going to ask each one of you just to briefly describe your character. Let's start with Eddie.
So I'm Gilly. I'm a halfling kind of former bounty hunter who has kind of joined up with these guys just to see where they could, where they can take him. I'm really good with the crossbow.
Dave?
I play a wood elf paladin named Darshi from Neverwinter Wood. She's very straightforward, doesn't understand humor that much, but is otherwise very dedicated. Took Oath of the Ancients and tries to do the best she can in all situations.
Great. And Greg?
Yeah, I play Olis Na, an elven rogue, very typical elven rogue. With greedy mindset, but also loyal to his friends, and fancies himself a bit of a sniper in the prototypical sense.
Great. So some of these characters were from the Lost Mines of Phandelver. Some of these characters were created outside Lost Mines of Phandelver, but took on the background of some of the provided in Lost Mines. So let's start in reverse order. Greg, you played Ulisna, who is not a standard PC in the game, but you took on the background of a standard PC. What was your background, the background of Ulisna?
The background that I had was my family had been displaced by a dragon attack, and I actually closed the screen, so I don't remember the specific town that I was from. But yeah, we'd been wandering, and then I had taken up residence in Neverwinter and teamed up with the Lion Shield Coster to ultimately find Broton, because I joined a session or two after the main characters, or the first character started.
And what did you think of Lost Mines of Phandelver?
Well, I enjoyed it. So I must say, first of all, it has been my first experience with 5e. And in the beginning, I kept using Pathfinder references. So I had to it was a bit of a learning experience. And I hearkened back to a time when it was Dave's first or second game. And he sometimes mentions this as I used know thy character. And so I found myself many times not knowing my character and feeling a little bit embarrassed about it. But as far as the module itself went, I found it to be very good. It was open-ended to a point to allow us to explore different avenues. I sometimes felt that maybe we were so focused though on rescuing the cousins that we didn't try any of the side quests or the other things, like maybe the orcs and stuff like that. We kind of rushed through the castle a little bit, but at the end of, but we also adapted, and to use a common word nowadays, we pivoted quite well when the situation arose. So it gave a lot of challenge in the beginning for my character. He went below 0 hit points in the first 3 combats, and then adapted to the point where he learned not to get into melee combat and stay alive the rest of the time.
Great, thanks. Dave, you, I believe, took a standard PC from Lost Mines. What did you think of Lost Mines?
I'm not sure I did. I took an Outlander background, and
that's right. Sorry.
Right, and then and chose pretty much. I mean, Darshi is about as lawful good as she can get. Watching over her friends as if they're newborn cubs, and
That's right.
thinking it's everyone's responsibility to create happiness and safety. And so I think she too knew the Broton character. And so she would be much more interested in rescue at odds with Olosna about what to do next, and to but there's people that need rescuing, and so that's what she would go after.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what did you think of Lost Mines overall?
I liked how it's populated. That once you do enough investigation, or you find out enough clues and you find out where everything is, that there are places to go and things waiting for you when you get there. I felt that Phandelver was reasonably well populated. Although I am curious, like when you find, spoiler alert, that when you defeat the first level of baddies, and then you go on to the next level and find out that they serve somebody, and then when you eventually get to the Wave Echo cave to try to remove the invaders from it, and it seems there's one set of invaders and a set of defenders, and for a while it was difficult to determine who was who. I still wonder whether there's more beyond that. I don't know if there's more beyond that in another module or adventure, but it seems like there's more to uncover. There's more enemies to be had. But I think this is my first sandbox style campaign, really, that I played to any great extent. And it didn't feel, normally I feel like I get option freeze with that sort of thing, and I didn't this time. So I think there was enough prompts, there's enough hooks.
And Eddie, you made your own character from beginning and background. How did you feel about Lost Mines?
Yeah, I also came in really late. So, full disclosure there, I was only around for the Wave Echo Cave part of it, which is the last adventure segment, and a little bit of the town. So I didn't get to form any of the cool connections with any of the people in the town, or get to know any of the people. So I don't have any of that. And in terms of, I liked what Wave Echo Cave did in terms of having a lot of history, right? Like there was a lot of dwarven skeletons, orcish skeletons. Like there had clearly been a passage of something that occurred. But like a lot of D&D modules, it didn't mean anything, right? At the end, it didn't play into the coolness of the cave. Like, for example, there's this whole cool thing where the waves are echoing in the cave, hence the name, and that didn't matter at all, right? It was just this sound, and it's like, give me something to do when I find the Wave Echo Cave itself, right? Instead of there being nothing. So
were you thinking of that maybe if you directed the water flow that
exactly. Like maybe there was a trap that we had to open the channel and get the water to come from the Wave Echo Cave to turn the wheel to crank the pump, and that would have solved the right, like a Goonies adventure, I mean? so
Vic, if Ed, you make a good point there, right? And so to activate that would be one thing, right? So to activate that, was it the last room where the specter was? The dwarf and the elf kind of had to sing together, but it was called the Echo Wave Cave. It would have made a lot more sense if the activation would have somehow, done something with the water, because the water was like a prevailing theme in the name, and we heard all the booming. It just, to me, that would have been an interesting little connection, that maybe then that urn all of a sudden turns and it sinks in and it opens the door and the water comes rushing through, which gets the bellows cranking, and then that furnace pops, rolls. And I mean,
yeah, I know.
I mean, it's obviously easier to nitpick a whole module, like one little tiny element of it.
No, I know it's a lot to ask, but one of the things that I always ask myself when I'm running through a purchased D&D module is, do I get everything out of this module just by killing everything that I walk through? And if the answer is yes, that's a module I can make on my own. Right?
So let me ask, and this will be, I think, the last question, then we'll move on to your final ratings for Lost Mines. So you can answer this as a player, or if someone were to run this game, this module. What would you change? What would you change if you were a player, and or if you were running this module? Let me start with Dave.
I don't know if the module is has that kind of openness where you can set it in whatever world that you want to play it in. I mean, it's Forgotten Realms, and that's something I'm familiar with. I think I've already lost track of what the actual question was.
What would you change?
What would you change?
Player, what would you change as a DM?
Like, what did you do as a player, maybe that you wish you'd done differently, or if you were the DM, what would you make sure to change? Or maybe it was just great. Maybe
I think we had a really good balance of players and characters. So I think we had everything covered, and I don't think that if we were lacking anything, I don't think there's any like oh, if you don't have a wizard, you're screwed or anything like that. The level of combat was very high. I don't know if that was elevated for us because we're a fairly old grognard group and know how to kill things very effectively. I think probably seeded with it might have been seeded with more opportunities before and after the adventure. Like I mentioned before, the villains, we don't really know why they were there. But it does seem like that there were hierarchy there. It was going to has the opportunity to escalate.
it's good.
Interesting, more mundane things to be found, maybe. There's a lot of in every adventure when it's written, it's there's going to be, this room has some broken furniture, and not all rooms are going to have something of interest, but you had introduced extra elements. You had treasure decks, and you had misfortune decks and things like that, and that always added interesting everyday items to find, even if they're non-magical or have little value, and those are always great fun for someone like me. And I think that aside from like when you defeat a BBEG and he's got a particular weapon or something like that, and that's an item of interest, but he's the only one that has it, and everyone else, like the goblinoids, have the stuff that they have.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't finish all parts of this. I mean, we went to one area, did the rescue that we were there for, but didn't wipe out the entire thing. So there might have been more to find. But I guess that would be it, probably, to not get more treasure, but to because I always love writing in more items, more personality, because after all of this place, the idea of this final place that we were going to, it was, it's historical. It was put together by dwarves and magic users, and they must have lived there for a long time. So there must be a lot of culture embedded in those walls and those rooms.
All right, good. Greg?
Yeah, so when I think of modules, and I get the part, like, you can't put a flowery description on every room, because at the end of the day, your module is got to be X size, right? So there's editing that comes out, and someone probably says, okay, room 3E has nothing in it, so I'm going to save a paragraph of space so that I can add it to a description of the hero or something. So there's always going to be those kind of elements. One of the key things I always try to look for, though, is like some continuity and things. So, and I thought this did a pretty good job of it, right? So you start off with goblins, and then you kind of upgrade it into bugbears, and the bugbears were kind of beating on the goblins and making them do stuff. And then, and then the drow were kind of like in charge of the bugbears. So there's some continuity of a stream of ever increasing difficulty with that. What I thought was a little bit disconnected, though, was maybe that spectator and the undead, because if I'm in a dungeon setting and I'm running it as the big bad drow, am I going to let my bugbears accidentally get killed by a group of sturges? No. am I gonna let, so, having, it reminds me of something like the old original D&D modules where you'd walk into a room and there was an ogre, and then you'd go 30 feet away and there's a dragon. And you're like, okay, well, why? Didn't make any
Apology.
sense. So, yeah. So that part I thought was a little, oh, okay,
To
so,
speak to that just a little bit, like if there had been a freshly killed bugbear in that room,
mhm.
that would have stitched it together, right? Like
Yeah,
in
but
there,
I mean,
lost the bugbear and then retreated.
but I get, okay, so we're adventurers, and the first thing we do is, okay, we wanna take over this mine, right? So what are we gonna do? We're gonna eradicate everything that's a potential threat to that. We're not gonna say, oh, well, I'm only gonna take
Yeah,
a portion of it, and I'm gonna let the other people have it. And I get, maybe the drill figure, she's not powerful enough to do it. The other thing, though, I will add, and so this is almost the exact opposite to that, is I like fighting like the new different creatures because 5e is still new. So that floating flaming skull was new. I was like, ooh, what's this? So I was able, after all my decades of playing the game, still find some enjoyment and, hey, this is new. And I didn't really want to even like research it because I wanted it to be a complete surprise. So that part was okay. So, again, it's a little bit of a give and take there where I like the dungeons to be, kind of ruled, and things all make sense, but I also like the element of surprise, like when the brick showed up or when that flaming skull. So, but overall, I really enjoyed it. And part of that is the company. You guys are great to play with. So, I wouldn't
Thanks.
make any like real physical changes to an open world adventure. I thought it was well done. Just little minor little knickknacky things, really.
Eddie?
As a player, there was nothing I regretted. I enjoyed it as a player. The what would I do as a DM? I mean, that's always hard because what I'm basically saying is, here's how you fell short, Vic.
Oh,
that's,
no.
you know,
No,
um,
it's interesting because the comments thus far are comments that other people who've run the game, who have reviewed the game, say the same thing. So I don't take this personally. Yeah, go ahead.
so I think that what you did right, which was for me the highlight of the. I know this is going to sound silly, but the highlight for me of Wave Echo Cave, which again is the only part I played, was you have that trinket system where when we search a room we get a trinket, and I rolled up a worm-eaten book on poisonous plants, and then we walk over to the poisonous plant area and we roll, and I roll so well that the poisonous plant is in the book, right? And
So
all of
Ed,
that was,
not to interrupt you, but I am.
but
But
you did.
that's how we actually found Cragmaw Castle, was through a random treasure roll.
So that's what you've done right? That's what D&D for me. That's what D&D is all about, right? Is that story being stitched almost on the fly together into a cool, like, that seems like something you'd see in a movie, right? You'd go into a room, you'd find this old worm-eating book, you'd think nothing of it, and then you'd go over to another room and go, wait a minute, I thought I saw a picture of this in that book we found.
Yeah.
Right? It was perfect. It was like from a script,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
I
So
think
maybe that should be our next review of that of those cards that we use.
Yeah. Well, it's all how you implement them, though, Vic. That was the key part, I think, where Vic or Ed is going.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add in terms of what could be done as a DM, and this again, has a lot to do with your style of play, is I like to attach everything to the world, right? And make sure that all of this is like connected in some way. So perhaps a little more dramatic pauses in the combat where it explains who's who, or a little more narrative, that because I had no clue. I still have no clue who the guy with the staff, the web staff is, right? I know
Lismar,
he
yeah.
was some dude,
Yeah.
but there was no connection. And now we've moved on and it didn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So
So is that more of like the villain montage that he tells his whole scheme before he tries to destroy you kind of thing? Is that what you're looking
maybe,
for, Ed? Or
maybe, yeah, it's something that
Well,
grounds him in the world and
yeah, no,
potentially
that's fair. It's just I just was trying to define what it
yeah,
was.
I mean, something, because like, for example, when we were fighting him, by the time he appeared, it was just another target to hit, right?
Yeah.
And I, from a story perspective, all I got was he's the whatever, the Black Widow, or he had a name,
Black
a
Spider,
spider
yeah.
name.
Yeah.
The what?
The Black Spider.
Yeah, I mean, he had generic bad guy number 3.
Yeah.
Right? It's like what's so bad about the Black Spider? Why is, and again, I only came in at the end, so maybe the Black Spider has been a
Oh, yeah.
recurring villain this
I
whole
think
time.
I think that ties into my villain hierarchy thing, because
Yeah.
he was like, hey, this guy is the one that other dude was working for with the clues that we found about that. And so that's what made me wonder. It's like, okay, was there a mass plan to take
Yeah,
over this place
I'm
and
not trying to be the
this
Simon
region
Cowell.
for a reason? And I think that's what the module doesn't provide.
I'm not trying to be the Simon Cowell of this thing. I just think
we,
they
we love Simon Cowell. Simon, if you ever want to come on and review a game, more than
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to, so let's move on then. And so Lost Mines of Phandelver, lots of things we liked, a few things we changed, hopefully not the DM.
Was
So
there
your
more
final,
than one mine we should have found?
your final ratings from Wormling to Ancient. What would you rate? What would you rate Lost Mines of Phandelver? I'm going to start with Greg.
I would give it adult, good,
Good. All right. Very
and old
good.
adult.
Mature.
Yeah,
An
mature adult.
an
Yeah.
elder.
Yes. Yeah. Like us. Distinguished adult.
Dave.
I'm between adult and ancient because it's hard to populate a sandbox type game and have them all like somewhat connected together with side quests and things like that. But I also have a fairly famous annoyance with old school modules that were put together with that total lack of dungeon ecology and like for me, White Plume Mountain and things like that, where it's basically a nutty wizard made this, and so there's a lot of arbitrary stuff in it. Those things make me raise my eyebrows. So for something like this, where it's like there's a town in need, there's somebody who needs adventurers, you discover more things wrong. I was very happy in playing it, and again, that all hooks into the way you ran it and the guys I'm playing with. So maybe that's making me a lot more positive than I might otherwise be. But yeah, it easily adult for me.
Great. And Eddie, what do you think?
So
What you rate it?
I'm going to pull from what I know, what parts of Phandelver I've played before, which is the beginning. Like we played, I guess, with Steve all the way through almost all the way through the first Goblin Cave thing.
Uh-huh.
Right. So I've played some of that, and I've played now the Wave Echo. So it would be unfair for me to be too harsh because I haven't played the whole continuity, and I do think that the module is geared towards a first-time player.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt today and say adult. Right.
Okay.
Had I experienced what I felt in Wave Echo throughout the module, I would have put it deeply in young, if not lower. But I think it's a good starting point, and it has a lot of. It seems like it has a lot of potential loose ends that you could play into.
Yeah.
Now,
and
is that
go ahead, Greg.
is that an advantage to a creative DM though? If everything's too well defined, then it kind of limits your ability to be creative on your own end. Whereas this is more of an outline of an area and an outline, so you can then decide to delve deeper into certain things if you want. No,
I like it to be there so I could decide whether to use it or not.
got it.
Although if there's tons and tons of stuff, yeah, it gets overwhelming because you got to memorize all of it.
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the comments that you had, some were unique from your insight. Some of them have been criticisms of Lost Mines of Phandelver. Generally, much like today, people do like the module with and recognize its shortcomings as well. I think in the future we probably should look at that deck that we use for the trinkets. I also want to talk about in the future the ancestral weapons that we've introduced to the game, and maybe we should probably talk about Jack's Fun House once we're done with it, but no spoilers thus far. All right, thank you very much, guys, for sticking around after the game and giving us your opinions on Lost Mines of Phandelver. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Yes.